morning, Mrs. Jones.
Good morning.
How you doing today?
Great. Just coming in to see how my son is doing.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for giving me your time today. As you remember, we sent home a note a couple months ago saying how we needed your child to have a good night's rest and a good breakfast in the morning. Well, it's because we were taking a really important test the next day, and well, on October 2nd, your son James took the Iowa test of basic skills over the course of 3 days. I mean, the test is an achievement test, which is based on what the students should be learning each year. We'll be going over the results in a minute, but I just want to remind you that basically this is just a test. It doesn't show the total picture of how James is doing. This test is just merely a snapshot for basically our evaluation. I actually have a portfolio with me of James's work that shows you a better picture of how he's doing in 4th grade. Do you have any questions so far?
No, not right now. I'm just anxious to see how he did.
Oh, great. First off, let me explain the top portion and the bottom portion of the test. The top portion of the test is the norm reference. Before this test was distributed, it was first given to a sample of a group of about 1,000 students over the U.S. It's consisting of different learning abilities, socioeconomic status, race, genders. And if you look at the bottom of the portion, it shows a breakdown how James is scored on each category compared to the nationals average. The basic skills that were tested were listed in the core total. These subjects included reading, language arts, and math. The composite scores are a combination of basic subjects plus social studies, science, math, and diagrams, and using reference materials. Okay, let's see. If you look over here at the national percentile ranks, it shows us how James scored compared to the national average. And on this bell curve, you can see that the 50 is the middle, or the average score, looking back at James's score. You can see he's way above 50 in most of the areas that he took. Take for instance, vocabulary. If we look at vocabulary, he scored a 75, which if we look at the bell curve, we can see that that's above average. In spelling, James scored about 46, which is a little below average, but not too far off, which is great. I have some ideas how we can work on getting the average up. These percentile bands kind of give us a visual to see how the average scores are and how James actually scored.
So what are some of your ideas to get James' spelling better?
Great that you asked. A good thing to do is if you go make games out of spelling items. You look around the house, or if you're driving in the car, practice those new spelling words each night. And of course, make sure you're at least reading 20 minutes every day.
Okay, I'll try and do that.
Awesome. Good. Well, if we look over at the SS at the top portion of the test, it stands for standard scores. The standard scores shows how students are doing in the 4th grade. The average score is about 200. So if we look at James' scores, we can see that he's right around average in all the areas, which is great. Do you have any questions so far?
No, it looks like he's doing pretty well, from what I can see.
Awesome. Well, if we look over at the next one that says GE, the GE stands for grade equivalent. This just shows you how James did by grade level and by month. For example, if you look over the score at 5.2, that just means that James' score level equivalent is at the grade level 5th and 2 months. When you look over the categories of usage and expression, he scores at 7.5, which is the grade equivalent of 7th grade and the 5th month.
Well, I have a question. If my son is scoring in the 5th grade level in most of the areas, does that mean my son should be moved up to the 5th grade?
That's a good question. I mean, not necessarily. While your son did score excellent in some of the areas, James isn't socially or emotionally ready to be placed in the 5th grade. But he is in a great position of learning what's coming up next. Okay. Well, as we continue looking over at the NS, which is the National Stay 9, this is actually an easier way to look at the scores. I mean, in my opinion, if we look at the bell curve again, we can see that the number 5 is the national average. So 1, 2, 3 are below average, and 7, 8, 9 are above average. James has a math total of 7, which is above average, and a score of reading, which is 6, and that's above average. Do you have any questions so far?
Looks like he's above average then in all the areas.
Yes, yeah, he's doing just fine. Now let's move down to the portion of the test. The section gives us a little details about the skills tested in each areas. It shows us the number of items in each skills, the numbers attempted, and the percent that the student got correct, and the percent that students in this great nation got correct. Go ahead and look at the list and see if there's any content items that you just don't understand. I mean, it's a lot of information, so.
Oh, I see he didn't get any right in the category of capitalizing names. I guess we'll work on that.
Yeah.
What is overcapitalization?
Overcapitalization. Oh, yeah, I see that. It just means that he's overusing capitalized letters and putting like capital letters in dog when it should be lowercase.
Okay.
I mean, so in this column it shows the total items of in this category. The next column shows the numbers that he attempted to answer. The next column shows the percent that James got right, and the last column shows the percent that the nation got right.
Okay.
These bands are just visuals to see what scores looks like compared to the national average. I mean, if you look over here, James scored 100% in history section, which you can see is the national average was about 58. You can also see that James scored 100% in measurement, which is great because the average was about 64. Some things we might work on are maybe using capital letters in organizations and groups. He did score a 0 for those questions, but I mean, hey, he did pretty well on this test. We also might work on with punctuation, which he scored about 33 when the average was about 51. I mean, don't worry, because I mean, I looked in his portfolio and I have some journal sample that he's written. I mean, he's very creative and the content is great. However, the only thing I worry about is he does struggle a little in writing complete sentences. I mean, and of course, if you know, it's capitalization of the words. In his journal, his math journal, we're actually doing some word problems and some graphing, and which he's doing great in. I mean, he always shows his work. His writing is very neat, and I can actually read it, you know. I mean, other than that, do you have any other questions about how James is doing?
No, I think that's it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I mean, I'll give you these handouts. These are for you to keep. You can go home, look over them. I mean, James is a great student. I love having him in the class. He's a great helper as well. So, I mean, just to keep up the good work, I mean, if you just work on spelling, reading a little bit, I mean, he's going to be a fantastic student. I love having him in my class. So I'm going to have you keep those, and have a great day.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.